All right, welcome in everybody. We got a special episode. It's just me because we gotta get the man, the myth himself on here. Tony Vitello, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Staring down the barrel of college baseball season that's going to be here. I hate to say quicker than you want it to be, but you want all the time in the world to prepare, and then when it comes, you want to be ready to rock and roll. But I think everybody's anxiously awaiting opening day.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've seen this much excitement. As long as we've been covering it, and especially the Tennessee fans. Obviously, your team has given them something to be excited about. Year after year, model of consistency right now, the Tennessee program. But before we get into all that, I promised Hot Rod. I had told you I was on the phone with him. He wanted me to start this show by telling you what's up, and I wanted to ask you a question as a just a general baseball fan, thinking about Cade Beloso. This is a guy who had injuries. He had his position taken from him by Trey Morgan, but worked his way back in from a DA spot and made a significant impact in Omaha. Just how cool is it for a baseball fan, even if you didn't know Cade Beloso at all, just to see that story write itself?
It's hard not to become a huge fan, regardless of what team you cheer for in particular, of any kid when they have that kind of story going on, where they overcome, multiple hurdles of adversity and end up having success. I don't mean to be dramatic, but it literally is the American dream. And within that whole deal is you got America's pastime. So it was a magic combination for him during the course of his career, even though there were just as many cloudy days as there were sunny days. But guess who came out smelling like roses? The guy who was able to, convince himself or have enough determination to keep forging ahead and forging ahead. So that to me is college sports. You see you got the star power now in our sport as well, but even like basketball, the one and dones are really fun to cheer for. And don't get me wrong, you at the Derrick Rose with the game on the line, but you can only have so many of those, elite kind of examples in each sport. Really, what's embedded with all those winning teams is a bunch of guys who are winning. They're winning players because they're winning people. And again, I think it's cool to have the explosive superstar athlete, but they're not going to be on a winning team. They're just going to have great stats. If it's just themselves, they got to be surrounded by guys like Cade, and of course, there's many other examples out there like that as well.
Yeah, and I think on that team itself, right, people are going to talk about, a guy like Paul Skeens, but you have, not just Beloso, but you have Dugas and even Cruz obviously was a 3-year guy himself, but you can go down that list with Morgan. And so a lot of people will look at the guys who transferred in, but ultimately that team had a lot of veteran leadership. A lot of things that I see within your team, people are going to talk about the guys that are coming in, but it's about those foundational pieces. I do have one more question before we get into all things Tennessee. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Hot Rod and I didn't talk about food. What's your favorite Cajun dish, Coach?
Oh, it's hard not to just go with jambalaya for me. I know, that could maybe be seen as basic, but for me, I like the mix of it. I like the fact that it's never the same depending on where you go. I'm not a huge crawfish boil guy, which I'm sure that bring on the making fun of me for that, people down south. But I like the party environment part of it. But I'm more of a jambalaya guy when it
That's
comes
a,
to
that's an
chowing down.
interesting concept within itself because Hot Rod had a mega crawfish bowl for the Tennessee series out there. I mean, he had so much they took home, major coolers full of it. He wanted to make sure he had enough for everybody. But as far as that scene, man, that was by far the biggest tailgate scene of the entire year, not just in Baton Rouge, anywhere I went, that LSU Tennessee series. Everybody came out. That Thursday night was a party.
Yeah, you kind of question your life choices when you're inside the park, kind of trying to get ready for the game instead of being outside during that event. But I guess it's both. Both parties got to have their own bit of fun in their own certain way.
Well, that's why Mississippi State has done it well. They've made it to where they can have the party on the inside in left field lounge. So if every team could start to emulate that, including Baton Rouge out there, I would love it. But let's get into Tennessee athletics. One of my favorite parts, going back to when we talked on your first episode, and when I follow social media or I'm watching the games, I love seeing you at all the different sports. right now Tennessee is the definition of an everything school. There isn't a sport that they're not good at. Just how great is it, you getting to go see, I know that you would support programs even if they weren't great. But when you go to a basketball game, when you go to a softball game, when you go to a football game, you're getting to see elite level teams. So just how nice is it right now in Knoxville?
It's phenomenal. And, I was a big fan back when there was a newspaper, which I think they still print it, but not many people read it. I used to love reading the sports page and looking at every sport. I knew all these different names, I knew stats, I knew leaders. And I still, that's kind of my history. I'm still just a sports fan, like a lot of us. And so being on a campus where you have all these options, it's fun to begin with. But then when they're winning, it's even more fun. And then the best part of it, if I could take it a step further, is just the peace of mind over the last few years to be a part of it. Because when I got here, all everyone wanted to talk about was what it was like when Todd Helton or Chris Burke was here, and all the sports were not only doing well, but you're kind of competing with one another, and you didn't want to let the campus down. There was these legendary figures on the campus, and you know, as a competitor, I guess I got jealous. I was like, well, I want to kind of be a part of that. And, there's been many steps along the way. And Danny White's administration has been uber aggressive with facilities and hiring coaches and helping our student athletes as much as we can with different, funding and things like that. And, I think it's worked out pretty well. We're competitive in the SEC, which no one is ever going to have a stranglehold on the SEC. But if you can be competitive in each sport, it adds to the allure of campus.
Yeah, the only thing y'all got left to do, Sydney Gilbert, Drew Gilbert's mom once told me she was mad at him for picking Tennessee because she is a big time gymnastics fan and he picked an SEC school without a gymnastics program. So that's all y'all got to do over there in Knoxville. Get y'all a gymnastics program, start to dominate in that too, and then you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I'll be at the first event. I'll hold on. I'll hold down some season tickets if we can pull that off. But yeah, I know with what we got going on, the facilities are literally improving in every single sport. And Knoxville's a great city. There isn't any reason why our schools should not be at least good in each sport. And of course, going from good to great is a huge challenge, in particular in our league, like I mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Drew Gilbert, I went back and counted the number of guests we've had over the past 3 years, 3.5 years from Tennessee baseball. We're up to 32, coach. And I was thinking about guys like Cheese, Gilbert, Evan Russell. I'm wearing his jersey that his dad sent me, Pavoloni, just all these different guys. I understand you get a new group in every year, but when we talk about some of these personalities and these big characters, just how much do you miss a lot of those guys?
Oh, it's nice that they come back, because if they don't come back for a while, you miss them even more. And there's always been some guys sprinkled in the winter, training in our weight room or using the field. Of course, we just had a first pitch banquet. Some of them come back too, but you miss them individually, and then you find yourself daydreaming on the field about just the group too. That group dynamic that was there with each team. I mean, Chad Dallas and Liam Spence and Max Ferguson, I think all lived together. Just seeing those three knuckleheads together walking into the facility or out of the facility.
It was actually them three and Pavoloni because they did their episode from inside their house, coach. And
Oh, dear Lord.
the three of them were in different rooms, but they would keep talking to each other during the episode, yelling at each other room to room, just really displaying their personality.
I gotcha. Well, we just finished practice, so I'm in a very basic room. I hope their background was basic or plain, being as that they
Pabs
were
was
in.
no Pabs was in his bed. So I'm sure the ladies loved that, but they were all spread out. But Randy asked, we had Liam on right after he got drafted, and he was in a hotel and he was in a stairwell, and Randy asked him in the this or that question, would he rather have the painful truth or a comfortable lie? And he said the painful truth. And he said, is the painful truth that you're sitting in a stairwell for this interview right now? And he said, yeah, because you could see the rails and the lighting, everything. But hey, we'll do anything for an interview. But those guys, it's been fun to be a part of their story. And that was something they talked about. We have another show, Pros and Joes, so we bring all the minor league guys. I told you, we had Rucker and Limpscomb and all them. We had Doe and Lindsay on together. And they talk about coming back in the fall, right? They said it used to be just a few guys, but now there's so many, like you have to schedule it out almost to make sure there isn't too many dudes in there getting in each other's way.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, the fact that they come back, and then they've also got some guys they've played with that are, maybe local, went to school somewhere close by, or are from here. But there's even kind of become a posse of guys who did not play for the Vols that are here. But the bigger the group of the Vols, I know that's what we really enjoy, because as coaches, the wins are awesome. Some of the crazy moments we've had are equally as good. But what's really, really hard to replace, and something that we just love having, is just the everyday interaction with a guy like Jordan Beck in the cages. And so you'll never be able to recreate it once their eligibility's up or their time is done. But you at least get a little flash in the pan if you see that guy in the cage or the weight room, out on the field taking ground balls, whatever it might be. And yeah, fortunately, all that is with the years, kind of piling up or stacking up now that we've been here, the amount of guys that are around has become a pretty good number.
Yeah, absolutely. But coach, you do it the right way. I'll say that there's two guys, and I'm not saying they're the only two, but in the SEC specifically, when we talk about their guys and they talk about the coach taking on more than just understanding their role as a baseball coach, but to be a mentor, a leader, somewhat of a father figure, someone who actually cares about them in their life more than baseball. If baseball is to end, I told you we talked to Booker and he came on here and talked about how you helped him with his life choices. And you and Coach Kingston are two guys that are always constantly guys talk about how you care about their well-being. And so I love to hear that from these guys talking about it's bigger than baseball, because you're understanding what your job is. Yes, you're a baseball coach, but it's bigger than that. And so I assume you get that from your dad, because we talked about him, and that's where I wanted to kind of transition to. I see the pictures and everything. Just talk about how the talks have been with your dad, Greg, and just how excited he's been to see the consistent success from you and the Vols.
Yeah, I think he's pretty blown away at seeing how the fan base has increased for us. The facility or the stadium's gotten better. How our staff has grown. Again, Danny White and others, if anything they can do financially, to increase help in one area or just keep our coaches together. Our strength coach has obviously been highly sought after. There's been all these subtle or incremental improvements in a bunch of different areas, and that's what my dad was all about, is just get better every day. And so he's seeing it happen here, and he's not only happy for me, but he's kind of happy for himself, because he's about, my parents are about as big a groupies as you're going to find as far as Vol baseball goes. So they love coming in and being a part of it, and really kind of starting to get to know the players too. He gets to do it to the 10th degree. But I think our community too has really enjoyed their easy access to our players, and it's been kind of a two-way street. They want to interact with our guys and vice versa, and it makes it easier. We're talking, Beloso earlier. It just makes it easier to cheer for guys like that. And so my dad's having an awful lot of fun cheering for family, but also cheering for kids he gets to know so well. It's almost kind of like their extended family with our players.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of these boys, I didn't want to lead off this question. This is a fun one, and I've had a lot of fun talking to your guys about this specific subject. But the videos were out of these guys playing football. And one of the things that I know about you as a coach is you let your guys be who they are. And I picture some of these coaches saying, no, we're not playing football in the snow. But your guys were out there playing football. You were probably cringing a little bit, worried about some injuries. But I got to know, did you watch it? Were you okay with it? Did you study the film?
I studied the film a little bit, to be honest with you, because Drew Beam gets, awfully complimented an awful amount of time as far as being a quarterback. And we got a couple other guys too that love talking about their glory days on the football field in high school. And basketball is another sport where they'll brag a lot. And you get to see a jump shot for real or a football pass. You can judge it for yourself, just like you're out scouting and watching. But I was able to see some of that from the office, and there wasn't much we could do with. You saw how much snow was out there, so you only had
Right.
so many options. And I don't know if that was the number one way using their athleticism, but it was a fun way for them for a minute. And it's been pretty cool how many kids we've gotten to first start recruiting, and then fortunate enough to commit or sign them and follow their career in another sport. We had a kid a couple nights ago just break a record in his state for basketball. One of the most storied football programs in the country, won a state championship with one of our commits on it. So it's really been fun to kind of follow those guys that have a true passion for another sport. I know that's a hot topic. I don't think if you have the passion for it, then yeah, then narrow your focus to baseball or whatever your best sport is. But all in all, after watching the video, like you said, I think all those boys need to just stick to baseball for now.
Well, Drew Beam would definitely disagree. And that was what I wanted to talk about. He, shot down the idea of anybody else taking the QB1 position. My group text had Blake Burke saying that he was better. We had Dylan Dreiling come on his episode. We asked him about it. He said the only pass that he completed was the wide open pass that conveniently made Twitter with the video, and Blake Burke saying that, he was that guy. Multiple other guys. I ask you this though, regardless if we have some superior football talent, is anybody challenging Drew Beam for QB1?
I don't think so. AJ Russell has the arm strength, and Blake Burke kind of has. Here at Tennessee, Coach Heupel is our favorite quarterback, even though he was on our campus. And Blake Burke does have a little bit of rhythm flow and can sling it from different angles, like Coach Heupel used to do when he should have won a Heisman. He won a national championship. But neither one of those guys would get the nod to start on opening day if we were playing football down in Dallas instead of baseball.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, let's transition over to baseball. On your first episode, we talked about it. Like, 2020, I've had all those guys talking about, had that COVID not happened, that was the Omaha team. 2021, y'all do go to Omaha. 2022, obviously, Super Regionals happens, but that's the best regular season I've ever seen that I could think of. And then last year, y'all go back to Omaha. So this year, you talk about finding an identity in each team. Last year, it took a little bit more time than you would have liked. But where are we at on this team and their chemistry and finding their identity? Because, like you said, regardless of what happened the year before, each team has to find their own.
Yeah, they do, and I think after last year, it made sense for us to take a timeout and say college baseball is in a different place, and college baseball on our campus is in a different place. And I think it allows you to just kind of have a level head when assessing everything that's going on, and kind of have expectations and set standards and things like that. I just think there's more stability now. But yeah, it's wild when you do look at the last handful of years. 20 didn't happen. We could say we were going to be as good as you can, want to say, but we don't know. There's, I guess, a moral of the story there is take advantage of every day you have. And then when you look at 22, you realize, you always are going to want to perform better in the postseason unless you win the national championship. So how can you perform in those moments of the postseason? But you got to earn your way into the postseason. And last year, for us, we really kind of had to, come together and really grind every single day and for every single out there in the second half of the season in order to make it. But yeah, we performed well in the postseason. So I guess if you could sandwich the two together, you'd have your best regular season and a better postseason, or one of your best postseason. But all those things are just building blocks, and they do have something to do with this year's team. Even though this group is an entity onto its own, I think they can learn from some of those things. Our coaching staff certainly has. But we'll start our own journey with game one coming around the corner here, February 16th. And I think so far, the mantra or the little theme here is it's a fun group. It really is. But we all know winning is the most fun thing that takes place on a field for the most part. I can't think of anything else. So we'll see how that part shakes out. But I do think that it'll be a fun group throughout the whole season.
Yeah, no doubt. And since we haven't had you on since the middle of that 2022 season, I must tell you what I did to my co-host Randy. I don't apologize for it. I don't feel bad, but I did schedule Jack Brannigan for the Monday after Super Regionals, and I made him ask all the tough questions. And then to make it worse for Randy, Jack Brannigan was the nicest individual I think I've ever met, making it so hard for Randy to do anything but just take the high road and tell him congratulations. But it didn't sit well when I showed Randy the schedule, and I actually told him it wasn't on purpose. Jack had said that was the day that worked for him. And so I was like, you know what, Randy, you've been messing with me since seventh grade. So here you go. But talking about the upcoming games that you got, Globe Life Field, I was at the Shriners 2 years ago when it was in Houston. Now y'all got to be in Arlington. I saw what it was able to do for you guys to prepare you early for what SEC play would be like. And, I look back even just to try to remember Semo, Burke, both had big weekends. Beam had a win, kind of putting him on the map early as a freshman. So how important is it to, have these early games like this? Y'all seem to do it every single year, obviously, coming out swinging with big opponents. And then you have guys like that to help with the leadership department because they've played in these type of games.
Yeah, it's huge because you want the first year guys to know what the conference play is going to look like. And that doesn't just mean talent, it includes it, but it's also what is the level of competition and attention from media, number of fans, just all the hype that goes into it. And I think this type of tournament does that. And there's no question it kind of emulates a regional feel too. You've got multiple teams that are all talented. They're all wanting to kind of make their mark in college baseball right out of the chute and show that they're one of the best teams there. So not quite the same as a regional, but it does kind of have that vibe. Again, on top of the fact it gives you a little bit of a glimpse of what SEC play in our case is going to look like, or big time college baseball will look like. And then too, it's early in the year, so you've got a little room for error, and you'll have some lessons learned that'll be very highlighted. Because if you
Mhm.
learn a lesson in that situation compared to one of these scrimmages that just went on the last couple days, the attention is the focus will be there, and the attention will be given by the kids for sure.
Yeah, and I'm excited for them. Being that I've done these college baseball showdowns. Like I said, been to Houston, been to Arlington. I'm a big fan of Globe Life Field. I'm glad that they are continuing to do it there. I think of the two stadiums, not that it's a competition. I think it's the nicer one in my opinion. And I'm excited for your guys to get to start and to see that competition. I think it's definitely going to make them stronger going into the season. But I got one last question for you. Another thing that I messaged you about. Javero January is my guy. We work out together every day, and he talked about you as a coach, and I wanted to bring this question up because so many people have a misconception. You're so fiery, right? But this is an umpire that you've been fiery with, and says that you're one of the best individuals he knows in his life. And he talks about how the game, you know, with as passionate as guys get, whether players or coaches, he says y'all have the utmost respect for each other. It may not seem like that on the field, but he said y'all could get into an argument one game and then the next day it's clean slate. You're professionals. It's what you do. So just I wanted to ask you about that. Just talk about the intensity of the game and how the fellow coaches, the fellow players, the umpires, everything. The respect for what I think is arguably the greatest game.
Yeah, and if it is the greatest game, either in your opinion or mine, should all give it its just due, which means as a fan, you should be active. You should be actively watching and actively cheering, and clapping for a hustle play. And then all players involved, whether they're able to start or they're just on the bench, they should be in tune to the game, give it their full attention and their full effort. Um, and if you're playing, you could be playing your brother. He could be on the other team. If you appreciate him and the game, the way you show it, in my mind, I was taught with my fathers, you compete like crazy. That is actually a compliment to what's going on. And then at the end of the day, when all that stuff is over, if you're a Giants fan and a Dodgers fan, and you're outside the stadium and the game is over, you're two human beings. There's not time to do anything too crazy. Now, debates are fun, and maybe giving somebody some crap if they lost or you got a good joke or something. But for the most part, I think kind of that phrase, we're all human beings when we're outside of the uniform, or we're not, flying the flag of whatever our team is that we want. That's really cool being in Hoover. The SEC fans are the craziest fans in the country, if not the world. I know that's kind of, our players said, well, what about like English soccer fans? And I was like, all right, you got a good, but for the most part, in our country, that group can probably be called the most fanatic. But as much, as they dish out grief to each other or to opposing teams' players, when you're in an environment like Hoover where all the SEC fans are together, they just have, I think take a lot of enjoyment of just being around each other and tailgating for one another, talking about, man, in '87 we beat your butt, in '95 you beat us. So I don't know. I hope that makes sense. I mean, Drew Gilbert is I've used different times. He is one of the most intense players I've ever coached. Maybe Jace Tingler is the only one that ever rivals Drew in uniform. That's the character he is when he's in uniform. And that's how he lets his hard work pay off. That's how he shows appreciation for Sydney, for his family, paying for all those events he went to. That's how he does it in uniform. Out of uniform, you're talking about one of the nicest kids and one of the best in community service settings I've ever been around. So I think it applies to either umpires or other coaches too. I mean, um, if it's an opposing coach, we might have words during the game about a call we disagree with, or we have a disagreement. But, you know, see a coach in the street, man, I know that guy slept in as many hotels as I have and is trying to get 19-year-olds to listen to him. So whether I show it or not, or whether it's the same colors or not, I've got respect and appreciation for that person for sure. And then we all know umpires, a good umpire, you don't even notice, you don't clap for them. Uh, so I hate being quoted as saying it, but they deserve our respect, for a lot of reasons. And of course, I'm joking about
Yeah,
saying I
well, no,
hate
I
them.
mean, he's a better man than me. I'm going to ride with him to the South Carolina Georgia series because he has a Thursday night game behind the plate. It's the only game running that night. It's on national television, and I said, I wouldn't want that spot. I don't want all eyes on me in that setting. And he said he thrives on it, and I was like, because even if he does his job right, Tony, if he calls every ball and every strike right, it doesn't matter. The fans are going to see it that way. To your point, and there's going to be a group out there that does not like him.
Right. But he, like Super Bowl Sunday coming up, you want guys that are like him and some of the other umpires too that we're blessed with in our league is just be a pro. And they are there to do a job. And they're also a good enough dude to realize they might have to admit maybe something, could have been handled differently. But for the most part, what they're trying to do is just be a pro and do the job as best as they possibly can. And handle situations like a professional. And I think when coaches sense that, they have that natural respect across the way for that person. And again, in our league, because of the finances and the restrictions and the requirements to get past that gate, you kind of already have to meet those standards that are there. So I think our players, again, they would be hard to quote and admit that that's the case, but I think they realize how good they have it in our league, the umpires we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I'm excited. I mean, you talked about it. The SEC, just like any other year, doesn't matter if you're in the West, doesn't matter if you're in the East, absolutely gauntlet. The talent is just crazy. And, we're 11 days and it's fixing to kick off. And I'm excited for your Vols, coach. And can't wait till it gets there. But I wish y'all nothing but the best. Daniel and Randy told me to give you their best as well since they aren't able to be here. But go Vols.
Nice. Yes, indeed. Go Balls. Thank you for including our program and cheers to all the fans out there because it's about to get really, really good. The sport keeps getting bigger and bigger every year. So I don't see why this wouldn't be another step forward for college baseball this year. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, that's Tony Vitello, everyone. We'll be back later tonight. Me and Daniel Ball will have episode 21. We will have Gerangelo Sagente from Mississippi State, the guy who throws from both sides of the rubber. So stay in. But in the meantime, remember, strong bodies, sharp minds, grit and grind all the time. We are out.